Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Tanks Blitz. But we're not really going to be, well, we're not really going to be doing any particular interesting or gameplay things. Well, I say interesting. I'm going to be talking about the E100, basically. That's the gist of it. So what is the E100? Well, we all know it as a tier 10 German super heavy tank, the opposite to the Maus. But you may or may not know that this thing actually existed in real life, as much did the Maus. This was possibly the only vehicle in the E series of German vehicles that was actually partly built, at least. And the E for the E series of vehicles stands for Entwicklung, which is basically the Germans' attempt at creating a standardized vehicle group, as it were. And if this T-57 will get out of the way. Oh God, this guy. There we go. So, ouch. Now that I'm getting shot at by all of those vehicles. So yes, the E100. It was the Germans' way of creating a standardization of vehicles. Just hit him there. But yes, so Entwicklung. Series of vehicles. Ow. Way of standardizing vehicle production, making it easier for the factories to start churning these things out, because of course the Allies were advancing and with bouncer heat. And so yes, the Allies were advancing. They needed something which was easier to mass produce, that wasn't just the Panther or the Panzer IV. Oh, come on. And so they started creating the Entwicklung series of vehicles. And yeah, basically a way of standardizing the German production force so that they all knew exactly what to do. It would make it easier to produce parts for the vehicles rather than having to sort of steal things and having all of these different vehicle parts that they needed to produce. Ow, who keeps shooting at me? It's sort of all up and over there. Medium tanks. Oh, random dread. But anyway, yes. So, what they were going to do is they were going to create an E series of vehicles which would be sort of standardized with a total of 5 vehicles, but only 4 is really what we'll touch upon. And most of that focus will be on the E100, but yes, so they wanted to standardize things so they didn't have all of the production tanks that they currently had out on the field. For example, the vehicles that the Germans actually had on the field, you had the Tiger 1, the Tiger 2, the Panthers of various types, the Panzer IVs of various types, the Jagdpanzer, the Jagdpanther, the Jagdtiger, the Sturmtiger, you had the Hetzer, the Sturgs, varying types of Sturgs, you had the Marders, varying types of Marders as well. You had the various types of Panzers, you had the Panzer III, partly, the Panzer IVs, various models, Panzer V Panther, you had perhaps a couple of Panzer IIs knocking around, you had command tanks, you had all varying sorts of things, and the Germans just thought, you know what, this is too much like hard work, having to have spares for all of these different types of vehicles. Why don't we standardize our production? What we'll do is we will create varying tiers and varying roles of vehicles, and we'll name them the E series, and we'll just name the E series after their weights so that people don't get confused about what's that. That's a Panther Alpha whatever. That's a Panzer Alpha Rang F, for example, or that's a Panzerfjärfung G or something. And so what they were going to do is they were going to basically build these E-series of vehicles. First you had the E5, which would have been a sort of light reconnaissance little thing, which, yeah, nothing, yeah, basically just a little light reconnaissance thing. Then you would have the E10, which would have been Germany's attempt. Oh, nice rhyme. And it would have been Germany's attempt at creating an armoured personnel carrier. So it would be, yeah, just an armoured personnel carrier which would take over from, you know, all of the other, you know, armoured personnel carriers that they may or may not have had. And that would have been the E10. Then you had the E25, and we all know about the E25, don't we? So the E25 would have been a replacement for the medium tank destroyers. For example, the Hetzer, the Stug. It would have been a replacement for all of those tank destroyers. And as we will now be able to realise, all of them had the common theme when building their chassis. They would all use the same type of they would all use the same type of suspension and road wheels, basically so that they wouldn't have to try and source parts from halfway across the front line. Every stockpile would have the same type of road wheel, the same type of tracks, and yeah, just the same types of road wheels, just to make standardization easier for the mechanics to actually be able to source the parts, fix the tanks, get them into the front line quicker. And the suspension and road wheels that you can see are the same as they would be on the 100, for example, the E25. Some of the road wheels were different, as you may notice. The E25 road wheels, for example, are slightly different to the E100's road wheels. A grill. Oh! Beautiful high explosive shot. Poor grill. But yeah, so they would all have the same type of road wheel. Some of them would be slightly different. As you know, the E25's road wheels are slightly thinner, as it were. Slightly thinner, slightly bigger, made out of more sort of steel-looking items, rather than the 100 road wheels, as we can see here, or indeed the E75s. But they all had. Oh yes. But they would all just have the standardized road wheels, basically. It was one of the first ways of actually standardizing the tanks. So that was the E25. It would mount a 75mm gun, the same as is on the Stug. Oh god, I almost fell into the water. Yeah, so it would mount the same 75mm gun that's mounted on the Stug, which is the sort of long 75 gun, which we all know and love. And it would be a very low sprung tank. It would have a single machine gun turret up the top for defense against infantry. It would be very low, you know, therefore being very difficult to see. Yeah, they'll get that. That's easy. And it would just be a very sneaky tank to drive. Then you had the E50. Now the E50 was going to be the defense, or sorry, not the defense. I was distracted by that STB1. What it would be is it would be, hello friend. Yeah, there we go. The E50 would have been a replacement for the Panzer IV. And it was going to be the new medium tank of Germany, and it would have weighed 50 tons, obviously, considering the fact that the E10 would have weighed 10 tons, the E25 would have weighed 25. Can you not? And of course we miss. So yeah, the E25 would have weighed 25 tons, the E50 would have weighed 50 tons, and it was going to the E50 wasn't actually going to have the turret which we see. It wasn't going to have the turret which we see on the E50M, or indeed the upgraded E50 turret. It was actually going to have the small term turret, and we've all seen the small term on the Panther and the Panther 2. And the actual Panther was going to have the upgrade to the small term in real life as well, once they actually sorted out the Kings and brought it into full production. Obviously they lost the war before they could do that, but that was going to be an idea of the small term. Excuse me, drinking my tea. So, yeah, the E50 was going to have the small term on top of it. It was going to have a chassis similar to the Tiger II. It's going to be a replacement for all of the German medium tanks that were currently in production, the Panther, the Panzer IVs, the Panzer IIIs, and it was going to mount the small term with an 88mm gun in it, the long 88mm gun that was mounted on the Tiger II. They were going to mount that in it, in the small term helmet, on top of a version of the Tiger II's hull, and therefore the Tiger II's sort of drive wheels. And of course, using the standardization, they were going to have the same. Yes, they were going to have the same road wheels, tracks, whatever, on the 50 as they were going to have on the E75, the E100, the E25, the E10, the E5. And so yeah, they were going to do that. And that was going to be the replacement for the German mediums, and it was going to be a pretty fast, rather, medium tank. Oh, come on! That's Stalinium tracks. But yeah, so it was going to have, yeah, all of that. Oh. I should have stuck with it. AP. But yeah, so the E50 was going to have a hull similar to that, with the small term, with the long 88 on it, medium tank, perfect for killing the British and the Americans. So that was the idea with that. Go away. Right. So, that's the E50. Then you had the E75, and the E75 was going to be the replacement. I was talking the E50s, there's an E50. The E75 was going to be a replacement for the Tiger I and the Tiger II, and I suppose also the heavy tank destroyer versions of those vehicles, and it was going to have a chassis again similar to the Tiger II, and it was going to have a version of the Tiger II turret. Come on. Yeah, it was going to have a version of that. It was going to mount a 128mm gun in it. Oh yes. It was going to mount a 128mm gun in it. We're not going to win this game. Then what it was going to do is it was bang. Yeah, that's right. That's what I thought. 103. No. And so. Yeah. So. The E75 was going to be the replacement for, as was mentioned, all of the heavy tanks currently in production, and it was going to weigh 75 tons. It was going to be a sort of breakthrough tank mounted with the 128mm gun, and it was just going to be the mainstay of the heavy tank battalions. Then you had the heavy tanks, because Hitler liked his heavy tanks, and as far as I know, it was the only. Oh, come on! Really? We're all going over here. Great. So yes, Germany, well, more Hitler liked his super heavy tanks, because as the Allies were invading the fatherland, they needed not so much the medium tanks like the Panzer IVs to perform the Blitzkriegs, but instead they needed something with lots of armour that could stop the Allied tank battalions in their tracks. Hence why the Tiger II was created as a sort of thing like that. But then he also had some super heavies in the making, or on the cards. Can you not? Can you not? I have no idea how I survived. But yeah, so he then had some super heavies in the making. Can you not? One of them was, of course, the Mouse. The second one was the 100. And as the last of the E series of vehicles, it was going to weigh 100 tons. But it weighed 140 tons. It was going to be armed with a 149mm, although in this case it is 150. It was going to mount a 150 gun. Or a 170mm gun. Yeah, that's right. 170 gun. 170mm in the tank, which would have been absolutely crazy. Oh yes. And then. Oh no. No. And it was going to have 200mm of armour up front. Bang. It was going to have a coaxial 75mm gun, similar to the Mouse, except in the E100 they decided to mount it above the main gun for some reason, as you would be able to see from the. Oh, can we? If he drives forwards, no. So yeah, as you can see, that little sticking out thing at the front of the oh, come on, at the front of the turret, that was going to be the coaxial 75. It was going to be mounted above the main gun for some reason. But yeah, similar to the Mouse, it's just an additional gun to put on it. Into the engine. Or into the ammo rack. And it was going to have the Mouse 2 turret. This is the Tiger Mouse turret. This is the Mouse 2 turret, which was eventually going to go on the Mouse. So yeah, this turret was planned to go on the Mouse. It would have looked very odd to the Mouse that we see. But yeah, what they were originally planning to do with the 100 when they built it was borrow the turret drive and the transmission from the Tiger II. They were also going to have the 700 horsepower Maybach from the Tiger II and the Tiger in this tank. Yeah, that's right, the 700 horsepower engine for a tank which weighed 140 tons. It was going to go at a theoretical 24 kilometers an hour, although I suspect that would have been more like 22 kilometers a day, because of course 140 ton tank with a 700 horsepower engine would have been rather underpowered. But then they decided to revamp it. They decided they would put the brand new Maybach 1200 horsepower engine in it. It would have a theoretical speed of 40 kilometers an hour. It would of course mount the big old 150 in it with the coaxial 75, and it would be the rollabout on the battlefield. And it would have been 140 tons, even though it's called D100, because you know that went well. And so Hitler decided, yep, start production on it. Start it along with the Mouse and see how it goes from there. And so they started production on it. But then Hitler decided, you know what, we need more tanks. We can't waste our time with these super heavy projects. oh god, who even started these super heavy projects anyway? Stop what you're doing with them. And so they decided to stop work, leaving only 3 people at the main production facility to actually work on the project. They started churning out the old tanks again. And those 3 people actually accomplished in creating a hull of this tank. A single hull was actually built. The British took it, they took it for tests, and after they tested it, they scrapped it. There we go. And so yeah, the British took it, they tested it, they scrapped it, and that was the end of the E100 hull, which was the only one ever made. And yeah, but they actually built this tank, well, the hull of it, and they actually got up the road wheels. You can see pictures of British soldiers with the engine is damaged. We slowed down. We nailed them back. Yes, go E50M. Go. Save me, my brother. Yeah, there goes my engine, but that's fine. Oh, it isn't. Okay. But yeah. So they swarmed that hill. We had no resistance, really. There was me and an E50 and a Jagdpanzer E100. Yeah, so that's the E100. It would have been a heavy breakthrough tank, and it would have had a 150mm gun. It would have weighed 140 tons with a 1,200 horsepower engine in it, 40 kilometers an hour. They're being fanciful here. Total of 6 people, I think it would have been. 2 at the front there, 4 in the turret, 2 loaders, commander, gunner, driver, co-driver. Would have been about 6 people. Yeah, big old 150. They actually built the hull of it. Never got round to the turret before it was overrun by American forces, which the British then took the hull from. And yeah, that's the main overview of the E series of vehicles, more specifically the E100, because, you know, E100. But yeah, it would have been a great big slab of metal for the Allies to get through, no doubt about that. But of course it would have had its weaknesses, and its weaknesses would really have been its size. Its size and weight is really going to be the weakness of the E100. Allied air superiority meant that they could have had rocket-firing Typhoons, rocket-firing Hurricanes, Hurricanes with bombs, anything really, and they could have just blown this thing up. Plus no bridges would really have been able to withhold it, such as the problem with the Mouse. If you came across any sort of river, you would have to ford it. You couldn't actually drive over a bridge, because no bridges are designed to hold 140 or 190 tons respectively. And yeah, Hitler was just sort of being crazy with his super heavy tanks, but it would have been an interesting thing to see, no doubt about it. It's just a shame that they didn't keep the hull, they instead just scrapped it. But yeah, so that was the E100, so thank you for watching and goodbye.